wanted everything. Mama said, burn your biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, musings and victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a time, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Mama said, it's uphill for oddities, stranger crusade. Ain't ever wanna be sweeter than novelties. Don't ever change, we wanted everything, wanted everything. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, and never come down, no. Stay up on that rise, stay up on that rise, and never come down. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated, all tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. They say it's all been done, but they haven't seen the best of me. So I got one more run, and it's gonna be a sight to see. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a time, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a time, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Karl Mecklenburg.
Any of you fathers get one of these this Father's Day for? This was a Father's Day gift from my youngest son, Jeff, when he was in grade school. He's 26 now, but I kept it because this thing's hilarious. Eastern Hills looks different from this angle. I'm usually back there, kind of by the screen over there. My father and my grandfathers had a huge influence on me, and happy Father's Day, fathers. This is a big day for you. Thank you. My grandfather was a carpenter, my dad's dad. And he had this collection. He had this giant chest of drawers, and he would haul in wood. He lived down on the Mississippi River, and it floods every year and knocks down barns and bridges and everything. So he'd haul the wood in, he'd pull all the fasteners out, and then saw it up and use it for firewood. And those fasteners would be sorted and in this drawer. So anytime he needed a 3-penny nail, he could go in there and open. And I have the same thing in my garage. It's a much smaller version, but anytime I end up with a part that I don't need, I'll put it in there and in the right place and sort it out. My dad was a kind and gentle man. I don't know if he understood me, but he loved me. There was no question that he loved me, and he wanted to teach me. He wanted to lead me. I remember driving down the road with Dad, just me and Dad in the truck, and an animal ran across the road, maybe a quarter of a mile away. And the animal runs across the road and ducks underneath the fence and keeps on running. And Dad asked me, Karl, was that an antelope or was that a deer? And this thing's just a dot running across the road and going under the barbed wire fence. And I said, I don't know, Dad. How could you tell that? He said, well, a deer will always jump over a fence. Antelope go under the fence. That was an antelope. We'd be out fishing, and a raft of ducks are out in the lake, and way out in the middle of the lake, and all of a sudden they jump up and fly away because the boat's coming. And again, he'd ask, well, Karl, what kind of ducks were those? Were those bluebills or were those mallards? How can you tell if it's a bluebill or a mallard from this far away, Dad? He said, well, bluebills are diving ducks. They run on the water before they fly. Mallards are puddle ducks. They jump up and then they fly. Those could have been mallards. Every day, every situation, every opportunity to teach, my dad would teach, and it was such a cool way to grow up. I'm an outdoorsman, as you can tell, the stories about ducks and antelope, but that came from my male relatives, my father and my grandfathers. Not only was he involved there, but Dad was part of YMCA Indian Guides with me. Now they call it Adventure Guides, but it's the same program. It's a father and a son. They're elementary school kids. They learn about the outdoors. They learn about crafts, and it was just time together. My dad was involved in sports. He would come to every game that I played that he could possibly make it to, and it meant so much to me that he was interested in me. And I've got three siblings, so he was doing that with each of us, and it was an amazing commitment and an amazing reflection of what our Lord Jesus Christ and God does for us, so that he's involved in everything that we do. And that's the way my dad approached fatherhood. He was our number one fan, and that was an awesome thing to do. My first football game ever, I was 10 years old. It was down at Lyndhurst Park in South Minneapolis, football fundamentals. The mom had to go out and buy the jersey, so everybody had a different color jersey, and it was passed down from the older kids. Everyone had a different color helmet. They put your name on front on some white tape, and they'd write your name so the coach could sort out the Rugrats one from another. About 60 kids were out for this fundamentals. So not everybody got to play. And in the very first game, I got to play first. My dad was doing rounds. My dad was a doctor, so he had rounds that morning, Saturday morning, and he came down to Lyndhurst Park to see me play, and I was already done. So I'm sitting on the bench. He comes up and puts his arm around me and asks me, Karl, what do you think about football? My response after my first game as a 10-year-old child was, Dad, I really love to smash guys. That was me, right? That's what God put in me. Like I said, my dad's a kind and gentle man. He was a gynecologist, obstetrician, spent his life bringing new life into this world, and I'm sure he was confused by that. But instead of sending me to the psychologist, he supported me. And he supported me through the years, and it was amazing to see his support. Your kids are not going to be clones. And you're probably happy for that, truthfully. They're going to have their own personalities. They're going to have their own interests. And our job as fathers is to support, is to be kind, to hold their hands as they go through the ups and downs of life. And I had that from my dad. Whatever is true, Philippians 4:8 says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. I think that's a great description of my dad. It's so easy to get dragged into the mud and focus on the negative, to see the glass half empty instead of half full. Here at Eastern Hills, we focus on what we're for, not what we're against. We say Jesus makes life better. Not Jesus makes life perfect, but Jesus makes life better. When Paul writes, whatever is true, whatever is noble, to me he's saying there will be negative things in life. There will be. But it's our job to focus on the positive. My dad looked on the bright side of things. On one of his last days of life, he told his wife, honey, I've had a great life, but it's time to go. Not only was he looking at the positive side of things, even at that moment in his life, but he's also concerned about others. That's being a father. There wasn't a day in my life that I didn't know my dad loved me, even the day he shot me. Yeah, he shot me. Like I said earlier, I'm an outdoorsman. My friends know I'm an outdoorsman, and I have a friend in Valentine, Nebraska, who wanted me to come and speak at his church. And knowing me, he decided that it was going to be the weekend of pheasant opener. Yeah, pheasant opener in Nebraska is like Christmas almost. I mean, it's crazy. That's the big day, right? So I'm going to go out on pheasant opener. Not only were we going to pheasant hunt, but we were going to turkey hunt, and we were going to duck hunt, and I could bring my dad. It was going to be awesome. So we drove out there on Friday. I was speaking at the church on Sunday. Drove out there on Friday. And pheasant doesn't open till Saturday. So we were going to turkey hunt, and I'd never turkey hunted before. And my understanding is turkeys are very smart. Not domestic turkeys, but wild turkeys are very smart. They can hear very well. They have great vision. You have to be well camouflaged. You have to sit still. Maybe make some calls to try and get them to come in. And I hadn't done it before, and I kind of overkilled. I went down to the Army surplus store, and I bought a ghillie suit. A ghillie suit is what a sniper wears, right? I mean, I was a bush. So the layout, there were crops up on top. It's the sand hills of Nebraska. There's crops up on top, a little two-track road running along a creek that had dug this deep valley. Anywhere some water goes through in that part of Nebraska, it cuts into the soil. So it was this deep valley with cottonwood trees and oak brush, two-track road going along the creek, and then it crossed the creek and down the other side. So there was a little bridge here, it's a culvert, and you could see the tracks of the turkeys going across this little bridge. Turkeys would rather walk than fly, and they don't like getting their feet wet. So it was just a turkey highway. There was feathers and poop, and what a great place. And I'm sitting over on this side. I'm a bush, right? My dad's over here, about 40 yards away, and we're waiting. You do a lot of waiting when you're turkey hunting. And Dad got up, I don't know what happened, but he got up and had to go somewhere, so he walked off, and as soon as he did, the turkeys came in. Now, it was a windy day. Turkeys don't like wind. It makes the trees move. It makes noise. They don't act normal when it's real windy out. So instead of walking across the bridge where I would have shot one, they walked down the creek and flew across and got underneath the cottonwood trees that they were going to roost in. And they started making all the noise turkeys make before they fly up and land in the trees to roost. And my dad heard that noise and came back and sat down where he'd been. I'm a bush. And a turkey starts calling up the hill behind me. I don't know how far away this thing is. The noise really echoes in these valleys. I think it's in shooting range for a shotgun, but I'm not sure. But it's starting to get late, and you can't shoot after it gets dark. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to turn and shoot this thing. So I turned to shoot, and my dad saw that motion, and he shot me. He shot me with a 12-gauge shotgun, a 3.5-inch load of number 4 shot from 40 yards away. Should have killed me. 65 pellets in the back of my head, neck, and shoulders. Knocked me out. I rolled down the hill. I hung up on a sapling partway down the hill. When I came to, I heard him telling the other guys, the other two guys had come back to see the turkey. I heard him telling the other guys what had happened. I didn't even know what had happened. Now, I'm a big man. They weren't going to carry me out, so I got up and I walked back to the truck. Got to the truck, and we went to the Brown County Hospital. The Brown County Hospital is a garage. It is. It's 2 stalls. It's cement blocks. It's a garage. The doctor there, her only exposure to gunshot wounds was on television. She'd seen the slow motion bullet going through the victim on a cop show, and she looked at me with all the little holes from the pellets of a shotgun and said, "What are all those little holes? I thought you got shot." It's not reassuring when you've been shot. They got me stabilized, put me on a Flight for Life helicopter to Kearney, Nebraska, where they have a real hospital, and I was okay. I woke up the next morning feeling like I'd played a game. I wanted to leave. They didn't want me to leave. I guess they figured I'd spring a leak or something. But we went back to Valentine on Sunday. I went duck hunting Sunday morning. I spoke at the church on Sunday. I was okay. My dad was not. My dad had taught me all about hunter safety. My dad loved to hunt. It was one of his favorite things in life. Hunting, fishing, being outdoors, that was where he wanted to be. And he never went hunting again. He couldn't forgive himself. Now, I serve a God who forgives me. I'm sure a lot of you in here do too. If God can forgive you, if the creator of the world, of the creator of the universe can forgive you, forgive yourself. Whatever it is. So in the NFL, they film everything. They film every game from 2 different angles. Now actually it's 3 different angles. They film every practice. They even film meetings. So theoretically, you can sit in a meeting watching film of yourself practicing. Right? Everything is on film and everything's evaluated. You sit in the meeting rooms with your teammates and the coach is running the plays back and forth and he'll say something like, "Mecklenburg, it's a 2-deep zone, the tight end's running wide open down the middle. That's your guy, you've got to cover him." And I know he's right. I know my assignments, but my natural tendency as a human being is to think that's not my fault. It's not my fault. Coach, the defensive end should have jammed him so he didn't get off the line of scrimmage so fast. And the outside linebacker should squeeze him into me so he's easier for me to cover. And the strong safety should help me when he goes deep like that. What's he doing? It's not my fault. Well, what should I think? Yeah, that's my guy. That's my guy, and I'll get him next time. Honesty and forgiveness and self-evaluation is so difficult. But again, that self-forgiveness piece comes when you realize that you're forgiven, when you know that you're forgiven. You'd be amazed how many professional athletes are Christians. We're not all Tim Tebow up there talking about it every day, but we're Christians. And it's because to overcome all the challenges, to fight through all the you're wrong finger pointing that goes on when you're in a position like that, I think you need to know that you're forgiven. In the NFL, if you grade out 90%, and that they grade every play on technique and on assignment, if you grade out 90%, you're an all-pro level player. You're the best of the best. And still, 10% of the time, you're wrong. I'm going to forgive you, teammate, for being wrong. Don't make that mistake again. But I'm going to forgive you. Honesty and forgiveness is what Jesus offers. So I was not always a great football player. I was just one of the guys. I remember going back to my Lyndhurst Park in South Minneapolis when I was playing at the University of Minnesota, my first game ever, that place. I went back there just to watch kids play football, not for a scholarship, not for any money, just to play the game for the love of the game. And I went back, and Mr. Theuer, my coach, was still there, coaching other kids, obviously. I went up to Mr. Theuer, shook his hand, thanked him for what he'd done for me, but I asked him a question. Was there any indication when I was 9, 10, 11 years old playing on your son Tommy's team that I was going to be a Big Ten college football player? And Mr. Theuer laughed and said, yeah, there was something different about you, Karl. See those kids over there stretching? That's my team. They're going through the same stretching program that we went through, and you could barely get to the bottom of your kneecaps, touching your toes. See them all touching the ground over there? That was me. I was a stiff kid. In 9th grade, I was the smallest starter on our football team. As a junior in high school, I played JV. I didn't even make the varsity team. As a senior in high school, I was all-state as a tight end and a defensive end, but I was only 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. Not big enough to play major college football, so I went to Augustana College in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Any Vikings in the house? I had a speech in South Dakota and no one raised their hand. I went to Augustana on a 1/3 scholarship with the understanding if I played well, they'd give me a full scholarship. They sat in my family's living room, said, Karl, you know, it's late in the recruiting season. All we've got is 1/3 for you. But if you play for us, if you do a good job for us, we'll bump you up to a full scholarship later. So I went out to Augustana. I grew 3 inches and 40 pounds my first year of college. Things changed. I got good. My second year there, I led the team in sacks. I played every down on defense. We had that debriefing session that every coach has at the end of the season where they call you in, sit you down, talk about last year, what to expect next year. I'm thinking, this is it. He's going to give me that scholarship we talked about in my family's living room. First thing out of Coach Swisher's mouth was, Karl, we know your dad's a doctor. He can afford this school. We're going to take away your scholarship and use it to bring someone else in. Now, my passion, my mission at the time was I'm going to be the greatest football player that ever played the game. It just wasn't going to be at Augustana. So I left Augustana. I walked on at the University of Minnesota. Back then, when you transferred between four-year schools, you were ineligible to play in games. There was no transfer portal. So basically, my job that first year was to be a live blocking dummy. I'm supposed to imitate the guy from Iowa or Michigan or whoever we're playing that week. If I want to eat with a team, I got to sweep up the weight room or sweep up the locker room. Usually they put your jersey number on your laundry bag. The number on my laundry bag was number 114. There's no 114 in football, but that was me. Once again, it didn't matter. I knew exactly where I was going. I was the best live blocking dummy that team had ever seen. And as soon as I was eligible for a scholarship, they gave me one. Man, that felt good. Have you been there? Where you work and you struggle and you fight and you overcome and you reach this milestone on the way to where you want to get to? What a great feeling. Well, a week later, I tore a ligament in my knee in the spring game. As I lay in the hospital bed after surgery, the coach came to me and asked me to give the scholarship back. Now, a scholarship in the Big Ten is a 4-year contract. They can't take it away. In some other conferences, like the SEC and others, it's a 1-year contract. But in the Big Ten, it's a 4-year contract. And I wasn't going to give it up. I knew I was the best defensive player that team had. It got so bad in an effort to have me give up the scholarship, they had me rehab my knee in the women's training room. The next year, I led the Big Ten in sacks, and there was no question about whether I belonged. But I struggled, and I fought, and I fought, and I struggled. And when I arrived finally in Denver, Colorado, on a great team, winning championships and moving on, I developed pride. And of all the things that went on through those years, that prideful attitude that I had of overcoming, was something that I regret. It's kind of all came to a head in 1987. 1987, the NFL went on strike. I was the player rep for the Broncos. We were on strike. We were down at the stadium picketing a game where they brought in replacement players to play. And there were some other union people down there helping us picket. There was I think they work for the trucking union, and their kids were down there helping us. So there was a couple of kids that were down there carrying a sign, picketing, and they asked me if I would sign an autograph for them. And I said, sure, yeah. So I'm signing an autograph, and all of a sudden I'm signing a third autograph. And instead of just letting it go, my pride said, which one of you kids is going to the game? And one of them said, I'm going to the game. And I said, well, I can't give you an autograph then. And I took it back and I tore it in half and dropped it on the ground, and I thought that was it. But the next day, his dad wrote a letter to the editor of the Denver Post, and my world turned upside down. All of a sudden now, instead of fans, I got hate mail in the mailbox. I had death threats. My wife was scared. She wanted to go back to be with her family. I mean, it was really a tough time for me. Now that my pride had turned away and alienated my friends, it had turned away and alienated my family, I tried to turn to them, and they were done with me, truthfully. And then I turned to God, and God was still there. See, I hadn't grown up as a Christian, but Kathy, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, we started dating when we were 15, had brought me to church. And I learned at that time that I needed forgiveness, that I was a sinner. And we all are. But I didn't realize if I turned my life over to Jesus, that I could be forgiven and there would be a spot for me in heaven. Now, I wasn't the smartest guy in the world, but that sounded like a great deal. But instead of developing a relationship with Jesus, I just handled it like an insurance policy, I guess, where this is my ticket to heaven, and I put it in my back pocket, and I was a Christian, I was forgiven, but I never had a relationship with Jesus. And then all these things happened, all these things built up, my pride built up, all these things happened, and now I'm turning to Jesus a dozen years later, and he's still there waiting for me. He wants a relationship with us. He wants you to talk to him every day. He wants you to study the Bible. He wants you to learn about what's right and what's wrong in your life and how to fix it. In Jeremiah 9:23 and 24, this is what the Lord says. Let not the wise man boast of his wisdom, or the strong man boast of his strength, or the rich man boast of his riches, but let him who boasts boast of this, that he understands and knows me. That I am the Lord who exercises kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth, for in these I delight. I love that passage. Is there anybody here who Jeremiah is their favorite book in the Bible? Yeah, I didn't think so. For those of you who have read Jeremiah, it's all about destruction and killing and ravaging and armies coming in, wiping everybody out and all this stuff. And then right in the middle is this. But let him who boasts boast of this, that he understands and knows me. That I am the Lord who exercises kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth. For in these I delight. In these I delight. Fathers, that's what he delights in you. Do you treat your family with kindness, with justice, with righteousness? Do you do the right thing? God wants you to understand and know him through a relationship with him, that he understands and knows me. Now, I played football in South Dakota when I was at Augie. I actually, obviously, growing up in Minnesota and in Denver here, it's cold, right? Remember those football follies films they used to show? Remember that, where the ball would squirt all around and crazy plays would happen? Well, the craziest play that I ever saw was actually on a dry field. It was at Mile High Stadium, a beautiful day like today, except about 50 degrees. You know, those cool fall days in October, just a beautiful day. Now, this was early in my career. It was, what was it? It was 1984, my second year. And I didn't play very much until my third year. So I was on the sidelines during this play, and I'm standing next to the ball boy. And the ball boy is young. Usually ball boys in the NFL are 19, 20 years old. This kid's 13 tops. But he's the son of the general manager. It's Chip Beek, John Beek's son. And he was so excited to be there. Even though it was a dry day, he's polishing the ball. He's all excited. And this play unfolds in front of us. Jim Zorn, Seattle, we're playing the Seattle Seahawks. Jim Zorn, Seattle's quarterback, pitched the ball back to their running back, a guy named Kurt Warner. And Kurt starts running a sweep towards our sidelines. Now, Dennis Smith was our strong safety back then, and he'd flat knock you out. And he came up out of the secondary and hit Kurt Warner the way only Dennis could hit somebody. And Kurt went flying north, and the ball kept rolling west towards our sidelines, right at me and Chip. When there's a fumble on a Sunday afternoon in Mile High Stadium, it attracts a stampede of men, my size and bigger, running as hard as they can at this ball. Because they know if they recover that thing, that's going to change the game. So they're all charging at the ball. They're charging at me and Chip panics. And as he turns to run away, he drops the ball he had just been polishing, and it hit him on the heel, and it rolled out on the field about 5 yards from the other football. Tom Jackson's involved in this play. He was our weak side linebacker. He did his job just right. He got upfield, check bootleg, check reverse. He was the first one of the big scary guys to get on top of the ball, and then everyone piled on top of him the way they always do. Steve Largent was also involved in this play. I don't know if you remember Steve, but a Hall of Fame wide receiver for Seattle. He's a great player, great man, Christian man, but he was doing what Steve did best, and that's to be a pest. He's about this tall, and for some reason he thinks he can block linebackers, and he runs into you and you throw him out of the way, and zip, he's back on you like a little gnat. He's out there doing his gnat thing. He sees it. Here's the big hit. Everyone heard the hit. Heard our sidelines yelling, ball, ball, ball. That's what we do when there's a fumble. Tells the other team there's a fumble too. It's not too smart, but that's what we do. And he turns around and sees a pile of guys and a ball lying next to it. Chip's ball. So he goes and jumps on that ball, and some guys from this pile get off on that, pile on him. The refs were also involved. Obviously, they'd seen the whole thing, the big hit, the fumble. Tommy get that ball, Largent get that ball, the guys switching piles. He ran up to both piles and said, Broncos ball. Like I said, Steve's a Christian man, but he came out of the pile with the ball incensed. How can it be the Broncos ball? I have the blankety blank blank ball. It's a funny story, but there's a reason I tell it. You can identify the ball that Tom recovered, the one that's in the game, as the world's ball. This is paying rent. This is making your boss happy. This is bringing your kids to whatever their next event is. This is shoveling the sidewalk. This is just all the stuff we have to do. We live in the world. We got to do that stuff. But that other one, the one that doesn't belong, the one that is confusing, that's God's ball. You can identify God's ball by kindness, by righteousness. God's telling you directly what he wants in these passages. Kindness, justice, righteousness, straight from Jeremiah. I think it's safe to add charity, love, and forgiveness, as well as that list from Philippians, to God's pile. We all live in the world's pile, but I pray you find God's ball and spend as much time as you can there. And if you haven't picked up God's ball, there are people here who can help you if you go back to the care room and pick up God's ball. Maybe get baptized in an upcoming baptism here. God waited for me to initiate a relationship for many years. My life experiences have shown his patience and love over and over again. When I got shot, they left the pellets in me, all but one. They had to take one out because it was flattened. It was right next to my jugular vein, and there's nothing hard there. The doctor couldn't explain it. God is good. God had something for me to do. God has something for you to do. He wants to be a part of your life. He wants a relationship with you. Happy Father's Day.